Welcome to the Prehab Podcast, where we dive deep into expert insights, connect with industry leaders, and share real stories to help you take a proactive approach to your health. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Lau, a doctor of physical therapy and co-founder of Prehab. And today, I'm joined by a good friend, fellow physical therapist, and trailblazer within our profession, Dr. Josh D'Angelo. Josh is the co-founder and CEO of MovementX, a platform for high-quality physical therapy and personal training. He also co-founded Move Together, a nonprofit focused on global access to rehab medicine. Josh has held leadership roles within the American Physical Therapy Association, serves as adjunct faculty at George Washington University, and has received multiple awards for his contributions. In this episode, we'll dive into Josh's experiences from starting MovementX to doing service work in Guatemala, and how those experiences have helped shape his patient-centered approach to care. We'll also discuss the challenges of burnout in healthcare, the evolution of our profession, and the role of entrepreneurship in driving change.
We're facing a massive burnout epidemic. I mean, so much so that the Surgeon General recently came out with a report about the massive impact that burnout is having on our healthcare workforce. I started to explore different paradigms of treatment because I felt myself getting burnt out and delivering care on site on an out-of-network basis. And what I quickly realized was that I could treat based on what the patient's goals were, not based on all of these other arbitrary requirements that the traditional system makes you follow.
Yep. Josh shares valuable lessons on the importance of trust in patient care and how embracing failure is key to growth, both in business and clinical practice. We both agree this is the best time to be in physical therapy, with more opportunities and options than ever before. This episode is not just for those in the physical therapy field, it's for anyone interested in healthcare, entrepreneurship, personal growth, or simply hearing an inspiring story of perseverance and passion. Let's get into it. Josh, excited to have you here on the show. So Josh and I, we actually met 7-8 years ago. You're super involved with like the APTA Student Assembly, you and your co-founders of MovementX, which I want to hear more about and want the audience to hear about. You guys are doing great stuff now. You guys have been doing great stuff the last 8 years, and it's just really cool for us to finally be able to sit down, have a chat together, and share all the amazing things that you guys are doing for the profession and also for patients that need physical therapists like yourselves, like the things we're doing here at Prehab. So welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure. First and foremost, Mike, thank you so much for having me here. You know, it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the past few years on a deeper level, especially as we've started collaborating on the Prehab and MovementX front a little bit. And I'm just fired up to get in this environment with your amazing team and the incredible facility here that you guys have built out is really incredibly special to see in person. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I have to say, you know, back 7-8 years ago, I was thinking of some digital ideas, thinking of different ways we can get more information in the hands of our consumers, better educate the public on the value physical therapy delivers. And then I saw you guys on Instagram and I said, they're doing it better than I ever could. You know, that ship has sailed. These guys got it. Let me move on to different ideas. So kudos to you. Congrats on the incredible development you've had. And excited to share my story here today and learn a little bit more about all the great things you guys are doing.
Yeah. So when did you start MovementX? Did we date ourselves, first of all, by saying we met 8 years ago?
Oh, man.
When
I'm
we're
feeling
that old
older by
as
the day.
PTs?
Older by the day.
Yeah.
I graduated over 10 years ago now.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, we dated ourselves.
Yeah.
So when did you start this? You graduated 10 years ago from
George Washington
Okay.
University. Yeah. So the quick summary is I had the fortune of being really involved both at George Washington University in their Doctor of Physical Therapy program and also with the American Physical Therapy Association, APTA. And during my student career with APTA, I had the fortune of serving on their Student Assembly Board of Directors. And that board is served or tasked with representing the 25,000 plus physical therapy students and physical therapist assistant students across the entire nation.
I didn't realize it was that many students.
And it was a blast. It was so much fun. And the biggest lesson that I learned from that experience was, you know, I don't know what I want to do with my career yet. I don't know if I want to go and work in acute care, inpatient rehab, or outpatient. I just know I want to be surrounded by other passionate, dedicated, talented, like-minded individuals every day in my career.
Yeah.
And I don't care what I'm doing, but I want to be surrounded with people like this.
Yeah.
And so as I was going through that experience, I thought to myself, there's got to be a way where I can find this level of passion and experience it every single day. And so after school, stayed in Washington, D.C., did the traditional outpatient private practice gig, and started exploring a little bit too, and started trying different APTA leadership verticals, different continuing education courses. And then over the course of time, also some nonprofit work. And I had the chance to go to Guatemala, do some service work down there. It was actually my first time ever leaving the United States.
Wait, how old
Was
were you?
going to Guatemala.
Really?
I was 25 years old.
Really? Have you left? Have you left since then at
Yeah,
all?
I
Yeah.
kind of caught the bug, if you will. I started traveling, but the quick backstory of that is my parents love them. They gave me an incredible upbringing, a strong set of values, but they were the type of family that loved to go on the same vacation
Yeah.
every
Was it like,
single
was it a
year.
timeshare?
Same, not a
Yeah.
timeshare,
Okay.
but it could have
Yeah.
been. So we would go down same city, same beach,
That's funny.
same exact condo unit every single year.
Wow.
And we loved it. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had a great time, but didn't get to travel internationally. So went down to Guatemala, had a number of different experiences where I felt called and compelled to get access to physical therapy care
Mhm.
to different populations around the world that traditionally don't have access to it.
And there's so many people that don't have access to PT.
Yeah.
And that's what's really, really scary. I mean, it's everything that we're doing on the online side, everything we're doing in person, but there are so many people that we can help out there in the world that have pain. Maybe they don't even know that PT exists. And going back to what we're talking about at school, like that's kind of why we started the Instagram in the first place, was just to say, hey, physical therapy as a profession exists. Physical therapists can help you. Let us educate you a little bit. And it's interesting you mentioned in school, like I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I think I was in a similar boat. I thought there was only just, oh, I'll be a physical therapist and treat in a clinic. That's my only option. And maybe the only options are ortho and a hospital or acute care. Like there wasn't, I didn't really know what else was out there. So how did you then go from just those limited options? It sounds like Guatemala was a big part of that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, I had this moment. I was in my first outpatient job, and I caught myself doing something that I never wanted to hear or see myself doing again.
Hmm.
And that was, for a moment, I was in the back office with my coworkers, and I caught myself complaining about a patient. And in
Mm.
that moment, I just paused. I stopped and I reflected and I said, this is not the person I want to become. And I reflected a lot on that moment, trying to understand where it came from. And what I realized was that was the culture of the organization that I was in. There's a lot of complaining going on about patients. It was a negative culture. I think it was a great first place to work in a lot of different ways, but that was a small part of their culture, was complaining about patients. And so when I realized that, I knew I had to make a change.
Yeah.
And I started exploring these different pathways. Guatemala was one of them. I had the fortune of getting a program called PT Day of Service up and running with a co-founder of mine, Ifosa Guabadia. And we launched that program to try to educate the public and do good in the world through the lens of physical therapy. Grew PT Day of Service over the course of time to about 20,000 volunteers across all 50 states, 92 different countries. Spun that into a nonprofit where we got to go back to Guatemala and do quite a bit of work. Built a couple clinics in Guatemala with the mission of increasing access to quality rehab medicine around the corner, around the world. And ultimately now where I spend most of my time is actually with MovementX. And that was really an avenue that I took as an opportunity after that moment where I caught myself complaining about that patient. I started to explore different paradigms of treatment because I felt myself getting burnt out. A year into our profession, I was getting burnt out already, in a pretty good practice at that. And so what I started doing was I started going to different homes, different gyms, different fitness studios, and delivering care on site on an out of network basis.
Mm-hmm.
And what I quickly realized was that I could treat based on what the patient's goals were, not based on all of these other arbitrary requirements that the traditional system makes you follow.
Yep.
So if I needed to treat a patient for 20 minutes, I could.
Yep.
If all they needed is post-op ACL exercise progression, come in, come out, 20 minutes, we're done. If I needed to treat them for 2 hours, I could. If I needed to see them once every month, we could set up a schedule around that. Or if I needed to see you every single day of the week to progress you intensive rehab, we could do that. And so I fell in love with the flexibility, the autonomy, the transparency of it. And I started reflecting and thinking to myself, if my own mother was to get physical therapy care, this is the model that I would want her to get care in. And when I realized that, I said, this is the model that I want to spend my time scaling out.
That's amazing. And in order to get there, the part that's a little bit unfortunate, but it's a hard reality and truth is you're a year out of school and you're already like, man, I'm burned out. Like we as healthcare providers, we go into healthcare because we want to help people. You know what I mean? Like talking crap about our patients. That's not what we went into healthcare for. We want to do the best for our patient in front of us, but for some reason, the system that we're in, living by those rules that I can't just treat that person for 20 minutes or one, or I can't just treat them once a month if I want, or every day if I want because of insurance or the drive that they had to go to get to you, or for whatever reason there may be, the system that we work in doesn't allow providers to be able to give the care that we want to provide and that patients actually need. So it's an unfortunate truth that a lot of PTs burn out, but the fact that that is the truth allows us to think outside the box. And you're like, well, I can deliver care in a different way. And not to date ourselves again, you said a year out of school. For anyone listening to it now, you're like, oh, there's so many people doing concierge PT. There wasn't. I don't know what year this is.
Just a few years ago.
Yeah, even just a few years ago. Like this is a brand new model. And I remember when I was a student too, I went to one of the physical therapy conferences, and my eyes just got completely open because there was someone, Danny Matei, who does the whole PT biz thing. He was like, yeah, I'm going to CrossFit gyms, just setting up a table and doing screens. I was like, what? You can do that? You know, it's just so commonplace now, but it's like, how else can we provide value to patients in the community that's not just in that standard four wall, low ceiling, you know, fluorescent lights clinic. And there are so many ways that we can do that now. I think we were talking a little bit before we hopped on here, but yes, burnout's real in PT, but it's also probably the best time to also be a PT because you have all these other avenues. You have all these other options. You have all these other trailblazers of people that have proven that a model can work. And now you don't have to burn out and you can help your patients even more.
Yeah. And let's talk about both of those things.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I want to start with that belief because I genuinely believe that this is the best time in our profession's history to be a physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think it's the best time to be a patient in physical therapy as well. That's one truth. And I think there's a counterintuitive truth that's also true. As we say, two truths can be true at the same time, right?
Is there two truths and a lie? Is that what we're playing around, or just two truths?
Not quite yet. Not quite yet. Just two truths. We'll start out with the two truths. And the second truth is we're facing a massive burnout epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so much so that the Surgeon General recently came out with a report about the massive impact that burnout is having on our healthcare workforce, not limited to just physical therapy.
Yeah.
Actually, it spans across healthcare professions. And it speaks to the challenge of the environment that we're in right now. And if we look at some of the burnout research, the statistics are staggering. In our profession, in physical therapy specifically, if you look at the research, there's somewhere between, the range is pretty wide, somewhere between about 36 and 82% of our profession rates themselves as burnt out on any given day. So even if we take on average, let's say one of every two physical therapists is burnt out.
Horrible.
And think about how the rippling impact that burnout has, right? First and foremost, it impacts the provider. We know from burnout research that burnout is an independent risk factor of coronary heart disease, right? It's correlated with higher levels of anxiety, headaches, suicidal ideation. It's impacting the provider and the provider's own health on a daily basis. I mean, quite literally, we're killing our own healthcare providers, which is so hypocritical within our society.
Yeah.
And it not only impacts them, it follows them home. About 80 or over 80% of providers say that burnout negatively impacts their home relationships. Mm-hmm. So it factors into their relationships with significant others, even with their kids, their friends. And then if you follow that line through, it actually affects organizations and the healthcare system at large. That report that I mentioned with the Surgeon General, they estimate that there's $4.6 billion in costs due to transition, specifically due to burnout.
Wow.
$4.6 billion. So it's negatively impacting the provider, the organization, the provider and their family, the organization, the healthcare system at large. And who does that impact fall on?
Patient.
The patients.
Yeah. At
the end of the day, burnout is associated with poor levels of quality, higher levels of errors, of medical errors, and ultimately less access because our providers are leaving the profession in droves.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge challenge. And on the flip side, we have to figure out ways in which we can empower our fellow physical therapists, our fellow healthcare providers with innovative models, with entrepreneurial mindset or intrapreneurial mindsets so that we can usher the industry forward. Because now more than ever, I think we have an opportunity to change what the physical therapy industry and landscape looks like for the next generation as well.
100%. You think about going back in time for medicine. I think they call it medicine 1.0. Like you think you have a disease and you cut open your arm to bleed out the disease, right? Then you go to medicine 2.0. I think it's like the 17th century or something like that, the scientific method. And then now we're transitioning to medicine 3.0, which has a huge emphasis on prevention, your lifestyle, the food you eat, your mental health. And it's healthcare right now, it's predicated on sickness. As a provider, any provider, you get paid when you provide an intervention for someone that's sick. There is no incentive for providers to work on prevention, to keep people healthy. And I think it's Peter Attia that talks a lot about like lifespan versus health span. Like we're used to talking about health span meaning you're 50 years old, you're 60 years old, and as an age. But it's like, no, what's your lifespan? What's your activity levels? Are you able to get up and down off the floor at age 50? Or are you now 40 years old, 30 years old, and you've just been really sedentary your whole life, and even getting up and down off the floor is old? That's now like a 70-year-old health span. And being able to, again, focus on that in entrepreneurial models where you're not dictated by the rules of the insurance company. You're not dictated by the rules of technically the place of work or the coworkers that you're around. You're not dictated by any rules. You're creating your own rules to treat the patient in front of you the way that they want to be treated. If you think about, like, even if you flip the script, I know we're healthcare providers, but we're also patients too, right? When we go look for our own doctors, how do we get attached to that doctor? We trust them. We think that doctor wants to help us. Like, that is the most important thing. And if our providers are burned out, like you're saying, they're worried about other things when they're in front of the patient. We're not going to be able to build that connection with that provider, and then the care is just going to decrease after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now, because we're making the shift to medicine 3.0, as you mentioned, physical therapists are perfectly suited to deliver the solution and the interventions needed. I mean, I can't think of an industry, and athletic trainers, a lot of the movement health specialists in the world, right? Perfectly suited to deliver the solutions that are needed in medicine 3.0. Now let's start with even the public perception, right? How is medicine changing as we trend towards 3.0? Well, more and more people are becoming aware that, hey, surgery, not always the right solution, right?
Imaging doesn't always show you what you think it's going to show you.
Might have been there even before you got injured or before the pain started developing, right? That corticosteroid injection that you have, it doesn't come risk-free. There are deleterious side effects that could happen. Everything from, not only pain at the site of injection, but actually bone weakening, right? And increased risk of fractures because of that. And so we're perfectly suited now, as the public becomes more aware, to deliver an equally, if not more effective solution. And the added benefit of that, hey, if our solution doesn't work, you can always go back to the imaging, go back to the shot, the surgery. And so it's a much safer alternative. And as the public is becoming more aware of that, not only are they more seeking our services, but more are going to need our services. I heard a great quote the other day, and it was talking about the number of individuals in the United States who are turning 65 and older. And they said in the past, it's been referred to as a silver wave. And they said, no, it's not a silver wave. It's a silver tsunami. There are ginormous numbers of individuals turning 65 and older who want to be well informed about their movement health, who want to be able to get up and down from the floor and play with their grandkids, who want to be able to go out on a bike ride when they're 85 years old. And what industry is better positioned to solve for that problem than physical therapy, than movement health specialists? And it gets me fired up on a daily basis.
We are the key to working through medicine 3.0. 100%. Like like you said, there's no better profession. It's also the strength coaches, trainers, nutritionists, like everyone involved in, again, the lifespan to be able to help people live a better, healthier life. Like, that is our goal. And yeah, it gets me fired up. I don't know how to get there. I know that we're a big part of it and everything that we're doing, and trying to encourage people to be entrepreneurs, to think outside the box, to always put the patient first. I know that's going to lead us to that point, to that place. So many ways of getting there, and there's so many companies doing great things. I know for you guys on the MovementX side, you guys have an entrepreneurial model, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, I think a couple things just to give credit to the evolution of the industry over time, because we are in a challenging time right now. And also it's a time of great opportunity. that opportunity, I think, came because of a lot of the work that those who have come before us in this world have done. We have a great and growing body of research that allows us to demonstrate the efficacy of what we do, right? The report recently came out about all the different cost savings that physical therapists can offer based on treatment of things like carpal tunnel or knee osteoarthritis, in combination with our cohort of professionals have the academic pedigree in order to deliver those solutions and the right legal structures to be able to get out in our community and educate our population about the value that we can bring. We have such improved direct access laws relative to where we've been in the past. And so that has really allowed us at MovementX. At MovementX, just a bit of context, our mission is to help people move their best so they can live their best. It's that simple. It's a mission actually we share with a lot of different organizations, probably in the PT world. Yeah. And I think of it in a couple ways. I first think of it for the patients. And if we go out and we effectively help someone, say, who's in the CrossFit space, move their best, we're going to help them PR. And for them, that's living their best. Yeah. If we go out to help a kid in an elementary school move their best, we're going to help them run on the playground, play tag with their friends at recess. That for that kiddo is living their best. Zoom out to the older adult. If we help them move their best so they can get up and down from the floor and love and play with their grandkids, that's living their best. So we found it's a message that really resonates on the patient side. And also we think about it on our provider side as well. For every physical therapist, and we have a couple of personal trainers now that are part of our team, are our physical therapists living their best? And we've actually come up with a way to measure that. And so we're looking at that on a consistent basis. How close are we getting? And we've built an ecosystem in which we have providers come into our ecosystem and we look at 5 different domains of wellness, help design a system where they can reach their goals. And for us, a full-time caseload at MovementX is 20 sessions a week. Okay. I was reading the WebPT State of Rehab report recently. They said the average physical therapist treats in outpatient.
Let me guess. Average physical therapist in outpatient? Yeah. How many patients per week?
Per day.
Per day?
Per day.
I want to go with 17.
17? According to WebPT, it's only a little over 11.
Okay. So I was going with like the worst case scenario that I don't want to hear.
However, I interviewed a worst case scenario today.
Okay.
Earlier today, earlier today on Wednesday, I interviewed someone who said his max number of patients in one day was 52.
52?
And I told him, I said,
what's the math on that? 52 divided by 8? That's what? I'm not good at math. What is that?
He said he would go up to, it's about between 6 and 8 patients a day.
That's a lot of patients.
So he said he would have 8 patients at the same time, grew up to 52.
Is that even legal?
How is that possible?
Yeah.
And he said it wasn't. It was unsustainable, right? But the incentives were in the wrong place. And so at MovementX, our full caseload, and he was saying how easy this sounds relative to his past, because our full caseload is about 3.5 sessions a day, around 20 sessions a week is where most providers end up. And on average, according to an Updoc Media recent study that they released, the average outpatient salary was, you want to guess that as well?
Average outpatient salary?
Outpatient physical therapy, full-time job across the United States.
I'm going to go upper 80s. I don't know, 88?
About $80,000. $80,000. Your SoCal bias is coming out.
I know. Yeah, I'm living in SoCal.
It's an expensive place.
Yeah.
So average PT is treating 11 patients a day, according to WebPT, making about $80,000 according to Updoc. At MovementX, we've been able to design a system, and we built the software and efficiencies into it to help to really design a supportive and robust and efficient, effective system. Our average PTs treat about 3.5 a day, and our average salary last year was around $117,000.
That's great.
And so we've been able to leverage this new model to help make sure that our PTs are thriving in their career, in their finances, in their physical, social, community well-being. And we're analyzing that and asking some really tough questions. And, we don't proclaim to be perfect by any means, right? We all have our challenges, but we've taken a mindset of let's identify exactly what those challenges are, be brutally honest about them, and do our best to make them a little bit better each day in and out. And that was something I wanted to mention too, that I was thinking about and reflecting on is PTs now more than ever have career optionality.
Oh yeah.
If I'm inspired by Prehab, I'm calling them up and I'm trying to get a job with them. And I've heard of people who have done that before, that I want to work with Prehab and I'm going to try to do so from across the country. if I'm not satisfied with my outpatient clinic, I can go to another outpatient clinic or a hospital. That's been the traditional route. Now you can look at so many different solutions. There are companies out there like Hinge that are using, movement analyses and technology and delivering virtual solutions as well, and telehealth. Swords out there. There's concierge medical groups. There's so many different innovative business models that are popping up that I think PTs, that we don't have an excuse anymore. There's so many different ways in which we can find, however we feel most called, to deliver the solution and the promise of medicine 3.0.
And we need that. We need those companies to be able to do that because our field is shrinking every year. Yes, we're graduating. You said there's 25,000 students or part of the student assembly. So maybe we're graduating 10,000 PTs every year, but somehow our profession is shrinking because there's that many more people leaving. Now, are they all leaving from burnout? I don't know. I would guess a large majority of them, that's a top reason why they're leaving. But we have to have creative solutions in the jobs that we provide through you guys and a lot of other pioneers in the PT space, so that our PTs stay motivated. They know they have options and they can provide good care. Because what happens when more PTs leave? When more PTs leave the profession, we're stuck with that. Well, the PT that left in the clinic, well, instead of it being 20 patients per PT, one PT leaves. Now it's 40 patients for that PT. Then that PT gets burned out. And then it's just this horrible cycle that just repeats itself over and over and over again.
Yeah. And we talk to physical therapists who every single week we talk to physical therapists who say to us, yeah, I'm either going to go with you guys or I'm going to leave the profession.
Yeah.
I'm going to change careers. And that kills me inside every time. And we've learned the hard way that we cannot take a physical therapist into our system if we're not confident they're going to succeed. We're not doing anyone a favor by taking someone into a system if we're not fully ready for them and confident in them. So that's I think we need more of these innovative solutions to develop. And we want to continue getting better internally so we can continue to expand that. The gentleman that I talked to earlier today that treated over 50 patients in a day, which is still mind-boggling. I don't know if we can be the best employer to him. And so who else out there can develop those entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial solutions?
I'd like to take a quick break to introduce today's sponsor, Jane, a clinical management software and EMR that has changed the game for us here at Prehab PT. Switching to your software can feel intimidating, but Jane makes the process easy, providing you with onboarding resources and 10 out of 10 customer support to make the transition as smooth as possible. If you're interested in learning more, book a one-on-one demo at jane.app/switch. And if you decide to make the switch, don't forget to use the code PREHABGUYS at sign up to receive a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. You won't regret it.
You have such a great passion for entrepreneurship. Tell me more about how your thought process around entrepreneurship and your passion for entrepreneurship started.
Yeah, so entrepreneurship, I am fired up and super passionate about entrepreneurship, about business. Like I mentioned this earlier, but I believe that's the golden key that our profession needs to step out of the broken medical system. Now, I realize that not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur or has desires or maybe has a skill set to be, and that's totally okay. I want to talk a little bit later about skill sets to be an entrepreneur, and I think healthcare providers are great entrepreneurs. But at the same token, individuals, physical therapists, healthcare providers can join other companies like MovementX, like Prehab, like all these other companies we talked about, and have this entrepreneur model or be a part of another company that's doing things different. So you're still part of the solution rather than working, within the broken medical system. Now, to answer your question, to rewind back to entrepreneurship, I love it because I love problem solving. I think that's like I've done a lot of introspective work, honestly, the past year or two on myself. One of the themes that I've found is like my focus and like the things that I'm interested in, they have to be like a lot of times they're problems that I want to solve. And for some reason, once I solve that problem, I move on to the next thing. There's a lot of positives with that, but there's also a lot of negatives. And in entrepreneurship, you're always saying, well, what's the problem that I have to solve? What's the best way to solve it with the resources that I have? And then move on to the next problem because there's 1,000 problems to solve. Physical therapists and healthcare providers as a whole, it's the exact same thing. I don't want to call a patient a problem. A patient is a person that, as a provider, you're there to treat. But that patient's coming to you because they have a problem. And it's your job as a provider to figure out what's the source of that problem. And it could be multiple things contributing to that problem. And what's the plan that's going to best attack that source. very similar to what we do in business and entrepreneurship. You take a needs analysis, you figure out, well, what are all the things that are potential problems? What's the lever that I should pull? What's the one that I shouldn't go after to then solve that business problem? And healthcare providers, I think we're great entrepreneurs. Again, we go into health, all healthcare providers go into healthcare to help people. We can help people in the clinic, no doubt. We're great at that. Hopefully, we're not helping 50 people in the clinic. Maybe sometimes we are.
In one day.
In one day. Like, that's even more than like the ortho surgeon or anything like
Unbelievable.
that. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. What kudos to that individual, because he
Yeah.
is helping 50 souls a day. Maybe he's not doing it in the way that he wants to, but he's having a touch point with 50 different individuals, and he has the ability to impact 50 lives a day. And that's powerful. With entrepreneurship, you can grow a company or grow an organization to be able to also have that impact, to be able to expand the impact that you as an individual is able to have. Even if that means you have a physical therapy clinic and now that clinic has four providers only seeing 20 patients a day, that's now a bigger impact for that individual. Yes, he or she's not providing that care directly, but they're indirectly having a big impact.
So there's a narrative out there that I wonder if you've heard. And the narrative is that healthcare providers are terrible business owners.
Yep.
Why
Yeah.
do you think that is?
I think it's because the people that go into when people think of business as there's almost a negative connotation with the word business, because business technically means, especially most businesses are for profit. You're either a nonprofit or you're a for-profit business. So people naturally assume that a business, because it's for profit, it has to make decisions that are going to be maybe not the best for the people that work at the business or the people that the business serves, because it has to make a profit. So there's this negative connotation with it. And that's the exact opposite of the individuals that want to be healthcare providers, right? It's all about the individual and the person. And I've had a lot of talks with our physical therapists here, and like what we've been able to coach them and lead them through is like, if we want to have the impact that we want as a company, we have to be able to keep the lights on. We have to be able to pay you. We have to be able to pay the softwares. The only way to do that and to have a big enough impact is to charge some money. If we can do it for free, we would, 100%. And we're always looking at decreasing our prices we have on the app, like historically, and we're going to continue. I shouldn't be announcing this, but we're going to continue doing that as time goes on, because we want access to be as widespread as possible. And
Right.
sometimes the reason why someone doesn't have access is money. But again, we have to keep the lights on, and the only way we're going to have the impact is by charging some sort of money.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And if you look at the evolution of business over the years, this is where I love to nerd out. In the 80s and 90s, you look at organizations who are trying to maximize shareholder value,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maximize shareholder value, aka make the most money that we
yeah.
can. Okay. So yeah, healthcare workers are bad business owners because we're not solely focused on
Exactly.
making the organization the most money. We're focused on helping the individuals that we want to serve. That's what
Mhm.
motivated us to go into business in the first place.
Yep.
And so I agree with you. I actually think healthcare providers are perfectly suited to be
Yeah.
great business owners because we're such skilled problem solvers.
Yep.
Put a problem in front of us, right? What are we going to do? We're going to assess it and
Mhm.
evaluate it. We're going to identify the list of impairments. We're going to develop a hypothesis
Yep.
to solve for those set of impairments. We're going to deliver the intervention or
Mhm.
the solution, and then we're going to reassess to see if it worked.
Exactly.
The entrepreneurial mindset is the same.
Exactly.
And to your point, one of the things that we have done over the last year at MovementX, and I'm so glad that we've done it, is we've actually opened our finances up to the entire organization.
Yeah.
We've implemented open book finance.
Yeah.
And over the course of the past 2 years, really, I've had this journey with open book finance. And that is, as exactly as you alluded to, we have to keep the lights on, right? And so we have to bring funds in the door. And the more that our team can understand what goes into that, the better.
Mhm.
And when we think about open book finances, the first thing we do is we share a set of rules or beliefs with our providers during the orientation to open book finance. And the first one is about profit. And profit, because of how it's been abused in the past,
Mhm.
has a really negative connotation, especially in healthcare.
Yeah.
But the way we look at profit internally at MovementX, we say profit is fuel for our mission. If this organization is a rocket ship,
Mhm.
if we run out of fuel, the mission ends. We're
Yeah.
going to get stuck in outer space, and we're not going to be able to return back to Earth, right? But if we continue to have a profit, then we can keep dedicating the necessary funds to run the organization, and keep reinvesting in ways to make the organization grow and make all of us grow.
Exactly.
And so we've had this journey with open book finances, which has been really fascinating because now that everyone is more informed about our finances, we're getting better ideas back from our team than ever about how we can become more efficient, about where we do have the best opportunities for growth. And I think we're early on in our journey in that. But if you're willing to be transparent about where those funds are going, then I think we can empower a broad base of people to take collective action. So, again, we're early in that journey, but I hope to see more organizations going towards that in the future.
That's amazing. It's adding to the shared pool of information, right?
Exactly.
You're going to make better decisions if you have more information. And sometimes it's what are the constraints? Well, finances could be a constraint towards a decision. So if you're shedding more light on that, then everyone can make a better decision or understand why a decision was made because there is a constraint there. Finances are interesting. Like healthcare providers aren't educated with financial literacy at all. I know that's the complaint you hear. When I talk to other healthcare providers and we're having a talk about business, and one of the fears that come up is, I don't know anything about finances or my income's not going to be consistent. And that's so true. If you think about a business, yeah, there could be 1 year or 1 month it's profitable. Oh, they profited $10,000. Wow, that's amazing. Profit, although it has a negative term, that's amazing because guess what? The next month, well, it lost $20,000.
Right.
So that profit was able to fuel the business in all the months that it's not making any money and that you're reinvesting in your business. And yes, in business or in entrepreneurship, your income's going to go up and down. But again, the fact that you could even have a profit, meaning it's not just your salary, your W-2 that's staying consistent each time, allows you to make other decisions if you have that information if you have that information to make better decisions, to be able to reinvest back in your business or your people.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about that. So we talked about career optionality and how that is a component of why we think it's the best time to be a physical therapist or healthcare provider. When you started preparing for that roller coaster of income over the course of time with entrepreneurship, how do you think you were well prepared, or I'm curious how you were well designed, well suited to be able to navigate through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship?
I think it's accepting that failure is a part of it. And actually failure is good.
Yeah.
You learn when you fail, just like in physical therapy or if they're a healthcare provider thinking about this. You have a patient, like you said, you develop a hypothesis. You don't know what the answer is when you're developing that hypothesis. You put that hypothesis to test, especially in physical rehabilitation, where we're talking about pain. You work with a patient for 2 weeks, their pain gets better. You may have had your hypothesis that they're in pain because of this joint's doing this or this hip's doing this. You actually don't know when they get better. You have no idea. But say you provide an intervention that day and you do a hip mob on them, or you do an exercise and you give them 40 pounds this week versus last week you gave them no weight, and their hip hurts right away. You failed in that sense, but you clearly know why you failed. And failure is then part of saying, oh, okay, 40 pounds was too much. 0 pounds was okay. Maybe I'll try 20 next time. And being able to relate the things that we learn as healthcare providers to business, it makes it a little bit less scary, I feel like, because we're actually failing all the time in the clinic. I just don't think we've thought of it as actually failing, but we're failing all the time.
And in some ways, I agree with you 100% on the necessity of failure. And in some ways, for me, it was actually easier to fail in business than it was with patients.
Yeah.
Because, there was nothing worse as a provider than a patient coming back in and say, yeah, I actually felt worse after our session together. And to take that blame, and you really have to separate yourself because you had a hypothesis, it didn't work. You need to evolve. How you respond to that challenge is most important. But to your point, we're so well prepared to dive into business because we are ready to refine our hypothesis, and we already have that clinical thinking in mind for the next problem that we're trying to solve. I had the fortune of sitting with a guy who has a really successful consumer packaged good product, a soap, and he's really almost a household name at this point. And I was talking to him, and I said, I'm so impressed with your journey. You guys have been so creative. Your brand is so beautiful. Tell me more about how you've done it. And he looks at me and he goes, Josh, I have failed so many times. And it was that mindset, and I appreciated his vulnerability in that moment. And it was his mindset that, we're going to fail a lot along the way. But that 99th time, the 100th time we try it, if we succeed, then we're going to continue riding that. There's a great podcast I heard a number of years back, and it said, the only difference between me and someone who didn't succeed is that I just didn't give up.
Yep.
The
You
only difference is that
kept
somewhere
trying.
along the line, that other guy, he gave up,
Yep.
and I just kept going. And so the importance of being able to handle failure and learn from failure and grow from it, I think is absolutely critical for us to be able to navigate through the career optionality we have. Yeah, there are more options than ever. All of them are not going to be for us, whether entrepreneurship is or isn't, but keep going to find that next thing that really does fill up your cup.
What's interesting about failure that you mentioned is that failure in business, like you're saying, especially if it's just you, there's no one to answer to except yourself. Now, once you have a team, once you have employees, yes, you may be failing those employees, but when you're with the patient, yeah, you're failing that patient. But guess what? That patient comes in the next day and they're saying their hip hurts. You develop great communication skills to have that patient still believe in you and trust in you, and for you to try a slightly different hypothesis or to adjust your plan of care. And as a healthcare provider, you're building those skills. Like, shit, I not only just failed, I have a real person in front of me that is giving me all of their trust, and I need to be able to communicate effectively to them. And that's a skill that we are developing every day as healthcare providers that then allows us to be better managers, better coworkers, better leaders when it comes to entrepreneurship. Are there any other skills that we talked about? Communication, we talked about failing. Are there any other skills that you can think of that makes healthcare providers good entrepreneurs?
Yeah, and I want to double down on one other area that you just alluded to, and that was, I get this question all the time from various people in my circles. That's how do you measure quality? How are you ensuring that we have 54 physical therapists now. How are you ensuring that
Such a
they're
broad
delivering
question.
great quality services? And honestly, we haven't done any of the traditional outcome measures. We're not doing the lower extremity functional scale. We don't have photo. And really what it came back to for us is where you ended up. And it was through some research that I read, and it was looking at the number one predictor of who succeeded with physical therapy services versus who did not succeed with physical therapy services. And in this article, it deduced it down to one primary factor. You know what that factor was?
I'm gonna guess. Is it trust?
There's trust.
Yes.
It is
Yes.
trust.
Yes.
Do
Yes.
you trust
Yeah.
your healthcare provider? And you can think about all of our experience treating a wide variety of patients. If you don't have the patient's trust,
Yeah.
you don't have anything.
Nope.
And then the second one was the therapeutic alliance with the patient, right? Which is concentric circles, trust in the therapeutic alliance. So how do we measure it? We look at the patient experience on a day-to-day basis. We're constantly monitoring the reviews that we get in, right? And the second those start to go south, even 4 out of 5 stars, that catches my attention. We want every single session to be 5 out of 5 stars. So we're looking really deeply into reviews, because I know our physical therapists are not going to be the perfect solution for everyone, right? Some people are going to need different interventions, different services. But what I hope our physical therapists do is they don't rest at that point. They persevere through it. And even if they are not the right ones to deliver the solution, they help the patient find the right healthcare provider to deliver the solution.
Exactly.
And so we have to also participate on a team. We have to persevere through those challenges, be willing to fail, and understand our boundaries of where our skill set starts, where it ends, and who is most effective at what place on the field. Organizationally, internally, I think we need to do that, and also on the broader healthcare team.
Because we're thinking about what's best for that patient, right? Not best at just me delivering a service on a weekly cadence so I can get paid every week. It's no, what's best for that patient. That could be not seeing me.
Right.
We screen our patients actually pretty well to make sure that we are a good fit for them. Just like in business, you're not going to do business for everyone.
Exactly.
You need to find a group of people that you know that you can deliver a promise to them and you can actually come through with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's been one thing that's been a challenge for us to learn, right? Is, any patient who walks in my door, I was of the mindset that when I came in the profession, I'm going to get them 100% better. Every single patient that comes through the door. When I was working as a tech, I would often hear patients come through and they would say, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. 90% better, 92%.
You need to be 100.
That was my thought process before I went to physical therapy school, before I started seeing the real world. So over time, I've evolved into a pragmatic idealist. Yeah, we're going to get you the best we can possibly get you. I'm going to do everything that I possibly can. Internally at MovementX, we have this saying, best is our standard, and what that means to me is I don't expect you to be perfect. I don't expect you to get everyone 100% better, but I do expect you to deliver your best every single day, your 100%, so that you do everything you can to help that patient. And at the end of the day, if you did everything in your power to help that patient, then regardless of the patient outcome, I don't think you have anything to be ashamed of. And so understanding what your best is, understanding your boundaries, I also think that's critical. And that is important both in a clinical skill set
Yeah.
and in the entrepreneurial mindset as well.
Yeah. And I think if we'll try to wrap up some of this right now. If we all try to do our best for our team and for the people in front of us, we're going to be in a good place. That's going to lead us to the right things. If you're in a place like you said you were with a group of people that was talking a lot of crap about the patient, you're like, well, I don't feel my best. And I think because of that, I'm not doing my best. That led you to your exploration to figure out, I need to figure out other options for me. And it naturally led you to being an entrepreneur, and that's great. And for other people, it could do the same. It could lead them anywhere. But as long as you're striving to do your best, our profession in healthcare, we will do fine. As long as we're always striving to do our best, we cannot accept complacency. The moment we accept complacency and we're not working on self-improvement, everything is over for that person, but then everyone that person's around. We cannot accept complacency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would add to that, we cannot accept complacency. And based on some feedback that I've gotten, I've taken a personal evolution as well, that some of the feedback that I got, I'll share vulnerably just briefly, was, sometimes, Josh, sometimes it's okay just to be happy and just to be satisfied, right? And the feedback that I got personally was, when Josh congratulates you when you do something well, he says, "Yeah, great job, team, and we can still do better," right? And so some of the feedback I've gotten that is it's okay to stop and just appreciate that moment. And so I've had to take a personal evolution to also live that as well.
Yeah.
Be really, truly grateful for the moment and the moment that we're living in. And also, as that moment ends, start thinking about the future. I start iterating for that next edition. And I think that's been one of the big secrets of our success at MovementX thus far. Been fortunate to be surrounded by a great team and taking that mindset, really appreciating the journey that we've been on, and also thinking, okay, now that moment's passed, how can we learn from that? How can we get just 1% better, a little bit better each day over time is going to lead to a transformation over time. And that's why a big reason, I think, if we take that mindset in physical therapy, as a physical therapy patient, as a professional, it's the best time to be a physical therapist or a physical therapy patient in our industry's evolution, in our industry's history. So I'm just so fired up to see what comes of the next generation of these incredibly talented students and future professionals. They're smarter than I think I ever
way smarter
than I ever was or could have been even at that age.
Yeah.
And getting back in, seeing them, it really proves it to me every day.
Providers have options, patients have options. There's access across the board for both provider and both patient. It's not just a buyer's market. It's not just a seller's market, as they typically say in real estate. No, both individuals, patients and providers across healthcare have more options now. And that's leading to the evolution of healthcare as we know it, from healthcare 2.0 to healthcare 3.0. So thank you again for sharing your story. It was awesome. Where can people learn more about you and MovementX? Where can they go?
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you again for having me. It's always a joy chatting with you. And today, absolutely no exception. If you want to find out more about me, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Josh D'Angelo, JOSHDANGELO. Email me at josh@movement-x.com. And follow along with MovementX as well. We posted more progressively on social media outlets. We're on LinkedIn. We're at MovementX Inc. MovementX Inc. on Instagram, on Twitter as well. So would love to join you on the journey. And if there's ever any way I can be of resource to anyone who may be listening, whether they're on the patient side or the provider side, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. And for those of you that are listening, whether you're a patient, whether you're a provider, let us know what topics you'd like us to talk about. We're open to talking about, as you can tell, a lot of things about how old we are, how we age ourselves, to even more serious things like healthcare 3.0. So let us know in the comments if there's other topics you guys would want us to talk about. Thank you for listening.